Hey, what's up everybody? Thanks for tuning back in. I'm Nick, also known as Osu Sick, and today is some big exciting news because as you can see there are two Talons behind me, but not just any Talons, they are Jackson Racing Turbo'd Talons. So if you haven't figured it out yet, I am here at the Jackson Racing headquarters in Southern California, and I brought my Talon. It's a 2021 Honda Talon 1000R Fox Live valve. We're gonna get the turbo kit installed. It's kind of brand new, but it's not really brand new. They took it out, they put it in one of their test vehicles, drove it around for a little bit, and then they took it right back off. So I'm actually gonna be getting one of those kits installed on my Talon, and it has some different stuff than the normal kit only because of what I have planned in the future with it. But you'll see all that right as we start getting it all installed and everything. So I'm really excited because in a couple days, I'm gonna be headed out to Utah with not only them, but the Proctor team, which is also known as J Sport Side by Side, and it's called the Talon Takeover. So we're gonna go to Sand Hollow. It's gonna be my first time there, and it's gonna be my first time driving the Talon with the turbo kit on there. So I'm really excited. It should make some great gains, and yeah, I can't wait. Honestly, I can't wait to see how hard or easy it is to install. It should be very easy. For one, they're gonna be probably doing most of the work. Thank you. And for two, I just gotta record it, and every kit comes with instructions, but they kind of already know what they're doing. And I'm not gonna go step by step. This isn't gonna be a full in detail install video. It's just gonna be just showing you the highlights and kind of I'll ask them questions, and they'll probably give some tips and tricks on how to just install it easier. So stay tuned. The Talon finally has a good amount of miles on there. I've already taken it to Mexico and all over Southern California, and even took it to Arizona for an event out there in Lake Havasu. So now that I got some seat time in it with it 100% stock, I'm gonna get some seat time with it in a Jackson Racing Turbo kit. So let's get this installed. What's up? All right, so the interior is already pretty much out. Almost everything comes out. Seats came out, so the firewall came out, and now, as you can see, there is a lot of room, especially on the other side. You have access to the headers, so that's huge. It makes it just easier to work on from here or the other side. And he's also going to run the wiring through here, and then it just also makes it easy to get that right there. So while he's doing this, I'm actually going to install the rugged radio just because everything's already out, and I could run the wiring for the radio through here, so it's all hidden. I'm actually just going to install the rugged radio in here. So might as well do two installs at once. So now he's going to take out the stock airbox. I'm pretty excited to see how dirty it is. Has a pretty good amount of miles on it, so let's see what this looks like. Do we need to take the cage off for any reason? Hope not.
I'll make it work.
You're gonna make it. He's gonna make it work. Because obviously the stock one does not have this add-on. Here's a stock one, so you can kind of see. So yeah, we should be good to be able to leave that on there. And the stock exhaust is still utilized, so that shouldn't have to come all the way off.
No, yeah. This exhaust portion, I don't even touch.
Oh.
Yeah, I unbolt here, and this just hangs out. The main stuff that gets tricky is just getting the stock out of the rubber right here, like this part of it, the stock hangers. We made ours a little easier, that these the exhaust hangers for ours don't have the bevel at the end. It's just smooth. So taking it on and off is a little bit easier. But the stock one obviously has the bevel, so
Yeah.
But I've gotten pretty good at getting it out. This whole thing will come off right now. I'm gonna take it off right now. And all it has to do is make room for the bracket that we use for the intake filter. So it's gotta make room for this.
Okay, for that.
This shares the shock mount. What's funny is these are tricky to work with, and this is a Honda tool. This is the official Honda tool for it. And it's the best, but they get a little tricky sometimes.
So you guys can see, definitely makes it easier having the right tools.
Yeah, this trio right here, the 90 degree, the straight, and that, if you're ever gonna work on your Talon,
Get those three. Because right now I have a flathead.
yeah, yeah, which I've gotten pretty good with the flathead trick for those things, but certain things like this guy, this is a fun one.
Oh yeah.
If you don't have the 90, you ain't getting in there. And you know how I know you have a lucky Talon? Is that this is this way. Every time I get one that's this way and you can't get to it, I just joke that it's an it's an unlucky wire.
So you just move the wire out of the way and...
Yeah, right here we'll get maybe about an inch of an extension.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's my original one, and you can see that right there. Then here is one of the Jackson's Talons that they already cut that part out, so it's the same shape, but you can tell it's cut out same form, just cut out a little more. So I'll be doing the same thing on mine. Then once everything's put together, we'll go back to putting everything in.
A little bit of a recommendation: everybody be careful with these things. They're under a lot of tension and they're easy to cut yourself on if you push them in like the wrong way. Just make sure your thumb's square on them, so you don't
bend your nail back or something.
Just whatever, yeah, just in silly things, you know. Especially this one. This one's a little tricky. Okay. Okay, so front cover comes off.
Look at that. Just so you guys, I want you guys to see that this is a stock air filter. Oh, well, hold on, let me focus it right.
Yeah.
So dust still comes in here.
You guys look
Debris
at
and-
this this stain on my pants. This is dirt. This is what was on the outside of everything.
Yeah. Which a filter stops that.
Yeah.
Filter will stop this.
Yeah.
But
like fine particles of dust, there's probably more in your house than on the inside of this intake.
my ceiling fan probably has more than this for sure.
If you guys watching the channel come from cars and come from the track, this amount of dirt on this Talon is probably one off at Button Willow or one off at Big Willow.
When you go
know
off,
what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah, so that's like just one off, and you see how usually dirty your vehicle gets. We drive these things
Purposely.
as if you're off track the entire time.
Yep.
And whether it's Honda's product factory or our product with our K&N filter, we're getting a lot out of there while still getting the performance.
Right.
So the stock intake box is relatively easy to remove. It's only these 3 10mm bolts, and then it's pretty much not attached to the chassis anymore.
Okay. So it's one on top.
One on top, one down here, one down here.
All right.
But we're still connected to the snorkel. So I'm gonna remove it from here and then take some of the plastic clips off to be able to just get it out of the way. And then I can remove some of the kind of shrouding that they use. You can reuse that and cut it to shape, but also the whole thing gets kind of enclosed anyway. So it's entirely up to the end user's use. You can. Yeah, this one pops off, and that should loosen up everything. Top this off now. There's still 2 more hiding. You see how these ones are attached to the rubber?
Oh yeah.
So either you take it off here, or you can take the rubber off. We're taking the rubber off anyway to make room for what we got to work on, and we'll reapply it when
I
we're
see.
done. So I'm just going to take it off from there because it's easier to get to those, and I got to get to them anyway.
Oh yeah, big difference.
Yeah.
So before the air box can actually fully come out,
We got to loosen these up. These tubes go to this plate that adapts the intake box to the throttle body. It's very BMW kind of M3 style that you have like runners going to throttle body. Once we get this off, this plate will also come off because it'll be replaced by our turbo intake manifold, which is a very traditional shape, but the bottom replicates that bracket.
I see.
So once I have that bracket off, you'll see that this is nearly identical, and this gasket is actually the OEM Honda gasket. Yeah, we still got to be a little cautious. There's a connector back here for, I think, intake air temperature. Well, what's nice is we're going to use this sensor anyway, so when you pull this out, whether you get the clip out or you pull the whole sensor out in the clip, you need it anyway.
Oh.
I like being safe and getting it disconnected and then pulling the sensor itself out. So as you're pulling it out, you don't like nick the sensor.
Oh, right. What shielding don't you use?
This half of the shielding we
okay.
don't use for two reasons. One, a turbo goes here.
Oh, okay. So that's a good reason.
Yeah, a turbo is gonna sit right about here. And the other reason is one of the mounting points, the one that I forgot, there's a 10 millimeter on a bushing.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That
You
stays
kinda
on
see
the
right there.
bracket. So that's also why we get rid of this, because the third point and how it holds up.
So that holds the air box.
Yeah, that's part of what
there.
holds the air box.
So now after the 3 10 millimeter bolts on top, the one on the bottom that's connected to the shield.
You guys see this is a little bit tricky also, because now, can you guys see? Here's our vent tube from the top of the valve cover to here. Nice thing is this is just, you know, a hand thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's up top. There
Yeah.
you go.
And now it's out.
You guys can see that right there.
And then down here, if you look, if you come around actually to the other side, you can look under here. See that
This?
tube right there? Yeah, that's just
Yep.
like a capped hose.
Right.
And I can either remove it from up here, from the clamp, or I can remove it down there, whichever is easiest. I'm up here, so I'm gonna try it from here. Obviously down there is easier, but I'm here.
Right.
And see how I got the clamp off, and now here it comes. Okay.
There it is.
So
part of step 2 of this install process is you have to get the entire original air box out of the car. All right, so as you can see, I kind of already laid it all out. This is a snorkel, so air will come through here, travels through this, and then on the bottom side, air will flow through. And as you can see, this is the back side of the filter. So obviously this part's gonna be cleaner than the other side. And then once it goes through here, it goes through these 2 runners, which run right here, and then it'll be the plate for the throttle bodies, and then obviously the throttle body, and then the engine. But as you can see, and I'll get some close-ups of this, there's actually dust in here, a little bit of dust in the runners, and the backside, I'll get a better angle, but you can see there is dust right there. This has never been opened. This is the first time we've even taken it apart. And like I said, I already put a good amount of miles on it. And this shows, obviously, here you can really see dirt and a bunch of dust, just a layer of it. So the stock airbox works really good with the filter. But just like anything, we're playing in the dirt, so it's impossible for it to get 100% of everything, because there's still some dust, but you know what? That's nothing to worry about. This is still the OEM original air filter from the factory. The Talon already has about 450,000. The Talon already has about 450 miles on it, so this has already seen Baja and a bunch of places in SoCal. So I'm gonna take this off so we can see what the other side of the filter looks like. You can see what the outside looks like. You guys ready? 1, 2, 3. Dude. That is crazy. This is sick. If this is sick and this is also sick, this is sick. So this thing is filthy. But that just goes to show you, look at, get a close up of this right here. That all came through the snorkel, landed in the airbox. The filter did its job. And on the back side, this filter was able to stop all this. And now it only has, of course, because again, a filter, you can still get particles through a filter. This is small particles, so just like wearing a mask, you can still breathe through it, right? So that's essentially what a filter does. It gets all the big gunk, dirt, debris, whatever it is that could flow through. And sure, a little bit goes through, but it's not gonna harm anything. So with the Jackson Racing filter, they actually tested it at K&N facility and they did a ISO testing. It's like a lab. So what they do in a sense is put the air filter, run it, and it's like in a closed room and they throw dust particles and they pretty much calculate how much the filtration system actually stops. So it stopped just over 99% of the particles that went through, and that's equivalent to the stock OEM Honda Talon filter. That's a big deal because as you can see, with 450 miles, this stops a lot. And on the backside, obviously there's a little bit of dust, but this is gonna be replaced by this. And obviously the filter, this is gonna be replaced with this. And on top of the Jackson Racing kit, they have a sleeve that you do not oil. It says you don't oil. And it goes over like that. So now you're actually getting extra protection, and that's not just me saying it, that's lab results that Jackson Racing went the extra mile to actually have it tested, and the results show it. So I'm really excited, and honestly there's a peace of mind knowing that this new airbox will stop the particles just like the OEM Honda air filter will. So this is crazy. I should frame this. This is, I would normally replace it, but exchanging this for the turbo kit. So let's go back to the install.
Right now we're taking off the heat shield.
With the best 10mm wrench ever.
Yeah, check that one out. Look how long that is, and then it bends at the top.
Yeah, so we use that slight angle to access this one, and then I'm gonna go back to straight and use it for this one.
Oh, back there, got it.
Yeah. And then from that point, they're rather short in length, so if you get them loose enough, you should be able to hand loosen them from here. I like to break them, just get the initial break loose until the electric ratchet doesn't have to work that hard. I mean, a big enough impact, you can just break it loose, but as you can see, you have space constraints in here.
Right.
So this, like an electric ratchet like that, like this, is very convenient for working on the header. Okay, this is super important, guys. Don't lose the acorn nut and the washer.
All right, do not lose the acorn nut and the washer.
These will be used for the turbo manifold, but their length together is specific to keep the stud from going through the acorn nut, and so you don't over tighten.
Got it.
And now look, now these are easy.
So if you drop one, you better keep looking for it. Don't just leave it in there.
Yeah.
Don't leave it on the ground. Don't leave it somewhere. Like I know a lot of you Civic guys leave them in the engine bay and wait till track day for it to fall off. But you need these.
Another little bit of a tip. The manifold design kind of pinches the inside of the head ports. So even though you loosen the flanges, it's not going to drop out. Given I haven't loosened it back here either, or even taken it off of here.
Right.
But know that a good way to not lose these is don't worry about supporting the manifold.
Oh, okay. So the manifold doesn't just fall out.
The manifold doesn't just drop off. Just be relaxed and just focus on retrieving this hardware by hand and without dropping. As I say that, of course, I'm using my hand in a manner for the shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, see, you usually block it.
There you go. That's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I already recorded what you need to take off, so now he's just taking it off.
12 millimeter spring bolts.
Oh yeah. I know a thing or two about stripping those too.
Yeah. Another place where the electric ratchet comes in handy is over here. Just break them loose. I recommend a little WD-40 prior. When Nick arrived, I already WD-40'd him as the first thing.
Nice. That was the first thing I saw him grab. So. What do you call that?
I don't even know what it's called, but it's the best thing for exhaust hangers since sliced bread.
Yeah, I've never seen one, but I can imagine how it works, but I want to record this so you guys, everybody else can see how this works.
Basically, if you work on cars and you don't have one of these, you need to get one of these. On. Hanger off.
Oh my, wow.
Yeah.
Obviously, you still put some like lube or WD-40.
Yeah,
on
WD
there, right?
is it's always good practice
easier
to do it.
Okay, so all the bolts are out and it is still stuck in there. So
yeah,
that's
it's still stuck in there. The flanges are a little bit on here. Our turbo manifold follows a similar splayed design of like pinching the inside. It's a very motorcycle thing, but we did it slightly less, so it still pinches it, but it's slightly a little easier to work with.
got it.
But yeah, from here, it's pretty much just like the intake air box. You just got to work with it. All right. After some finagling, this comes off. And if you look inside,
it was a struggle. It wasn't easy, guys. So.
Yeah, the flanges are pretty tight to these, and these are slightly narrower than here because it helps hold it on in place and get a good seal. You keep your Honda exhaust donut.
Okay.
That's
you have to reuse that.
Yeah. Put it back with your
with the reuse parts.
Yeah, with the reuse parts.
This is the fan harness.
So this is
red is positive, black is ground.
And that's the connector for the actual fan.
That's the connector for the actual fan. And then it comes up, there's a relay and a fuse. Actually, can you show me that? Because that's pretty sick.
Yeah,
so you actually showed me this earlier.
So the fuse is in a marine style holder, so it has the water seal on it. Not that you should be going underwater with your Talon, but
oops.
Yeah. So
I didn't go underwater, but I went through water.
Not James Bond underwater, but you can go through water. And then it has its own relay that's very common to get. So pretty much the intercooler fan's electronics is completely independent from everything else.
Nice.
So you're not depending on a factory fuse or splitting the difference on something.
That's good. And it runs to...
Here's another ground. This was the battery negative, and here's a ground. And then this is actually the really trick part.
Oh, so I messed that up. That's obviously the positive, and then this is the negative for the battery.
For the power, and then this
is a ground.
Yeah, this is a ground for the fan itself.
Okay.
This replicates the connector that goes into the coil pack.
Oh.
So the connector style for the coil pack is like this, and then it just goes to the harness. What we do is this actually now gets the connector, it gets one of the connectors, and then this goes into the coil pack. So now you can still run your coil pack, but now the fan's power is now on with the key.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah. That's cool.
So you don't have to figure out a switch. It's just like now it goes with the on-off electricity of the car.
All right.
Yeah. So that's how we blend that in. Another cool thing is sometimes the Talon does like a post ignition kill kind of check of the electronics, and because it still has the power, sometimes it actually keeps the fan going because the electronics are still going. A little bit of extra kind of post-run cooling. Wow. This one, the one that goes to the ignition coil, if you look through these two openings, That one will stuff into the, what would be the passenger side one, because that's gonna route to the coil packs over there. Yeah, just so you guys get a little preview of it, you see how there's connectors going into the coil packs. The coil packs look very similar to modern car coil packs that'll be on the valve cover.
Yeah,
but
they're not on the valve cover.
They're not on the valve cover. they're just running to here because there's not as much room on a tiny engine.
Right.
So both coil packs hang here. What we do, we take one of these out.
Any of them?
We take the positive one out.
But you could use any coil?
Yeah, you can use either one.
Okay.
But we like to use the color green one. And then see from here, that looks familiar, right?
Right.
So now this goes here and that goes there. So now your power is still going to your ignition coil, but now we're able to run power to the actual fan. Everything else can go through the driver's side one, since it's all gonna either go to the fan, go to the battery, or go to, there's a ground bolt that it's gonna share with a factory ground. From here, now you're just left with your fuse and your relay. You don't have to worry about zip tying them to the rest of the harness just yet, because it can't really go anywhere. So you just kind of let those hang out, and then you figure out the rest. All the wiring, I like to run on top of this main harness that goes to the battery, because after I get everything secured in its spot, I'm gonna use this line to be able to zip tie it to the harness, so it's nice and clean and out of the way. Just like what I said about OE, if they decided on putting it here, might as well follow their lead. So, but make sure all of this is on top of it. It's easy to kind of stuff it through on the other side and get it underneath this one, underneath this, and then you can't cleanly get it up here. So always double check that like everything is above this. So from here, trusty 10, and you've got a few things to loosen up. You got to loosen up your negative terminal, your positive terminal, and this ground, this factory ground down here. And another nice thing that we're doing this on a vehicle that's logged some hours, as you can see, most ground points don't have paint on them because a ground doesn't work if there's paint in the way.
Right.
So they're usually unpainted and raw. But we have some surface rust from just using a Talon the way it's supposed to be used in the elements. So before we actually get that ground on, well, it looks like also we're gonna need some WD.
Probably. That went through some water.
Yeah, okay. 1/4 inch drive, 10 was able to pull it off, but yeah, exactly what I'm getting at. Before I even put the ground on, even though it's easy for me to just put it on, I'm gonna take this off, take a little, I got 500 sandpaper right here, and just clean it off a bit. Off that cap for the block casing. It's 24, it's on there pretty easily. You don't even have to give it a lot. Like usually it's pretty tight in that direction, but it doesn't take much to get off. Just be mindful that there might be a little bit of oil. Even though gravity suggests that it should go downward, you know, it's pretty dry. Our oil drain fitting, so this is the return from the turbo oil. And this is also highly recommended. I'm pretty sure it's in the instructions, but I would do this no other way. Your instincts would tell you to screw this on, then screw this on.
Right.
Even though there's physical room to do it, it is very hard to get this right thread-wise without cross-threading it.
I see.
And now you've got an aluminum fitting and an aluminum cap. You really don't want to cross-thread this. So even though it's a little bit harder to work with, it guarantees more success. Put it on, hand tight it all the way tight. Like nearly tight using the seal, but just like almost where it's at, but so you can still do it with your hand.
Yep.
And then you fish it down there, and then from there, start loosening it off the fitting to tighten it on the block casing.
I see.
And so see how it's slowing down?
Yep.
And yeah, so I got a little bit, I got 2 fingers on it.
So it just needs to be snug.
That's all it's gotta be. And then from here, what I recommend, since it's not technically an actual AN wrench size, aluminum AN style adjustable, so you can get that tightened down without scoring the fitting. And same technique, a little bit, twist, a little bit, twist. And what's nice too, once we get this tightened up, this line actually pivots inside the fitting. We did this fitting specifically that it wasn't that you tighten it and that's your orientation of the line. You can actually turn the line even after it's tightened down. It's a pivoting line. So we can get this pretty much all the way snug, and then I can route it through the factory lines and electrical to let it hang out where the manifold and turbo will be.
Next up, I'm gonna install the manifold.
But before that even goes on, we got to get the original gaskets out. So very cautiously, with a very small flathead, you just kind of ease into there and you pop them out. If you're going to leverage against anything, make sure you're leveraging against the gasket and not the head surface, so you can reduce chances of scoring. You see how it's a pretty flimsy, you know, that wasn't a lot of force and we're already bending it.
Right.
So it's not gonna put up much of a fight. Sure, people are gonna ask, how do you keep that in there while working on your manifold? Because that's gonna happen every time.
If you didn't see what happened, it fell.
Yeah.
That's called gravity, everybody.
Yeah. So that's not a fun way of doing things. So the way to do it,
Some torque grease.
just some normal, all-purpose, tiny bit of grease. And tiny, we're not gooping this on. It's the tiniest bit that'll just
Hold it there in place.
hold it there, and by the time you start running exhaust gases through it, it's not even gonna be a thing. Now it'll stay. Clean off the Acorn hardware and just give everything a test.
Just make sure nothing was cross-threaded.
Just nothing weird, like you want to know it's going smooth. There we go. At this point, make sure, as you guys can see right here, my hardware is within arm's reach. So I'll be able to reach down and be able to get hardware. Yeah, you see how I'm really going in steps
Right.
to try to keep
Keep it
gap
even.
There will eventually be a slight, like once you get torquing it, and also this is on the stock one, like a slight kind of bow, or at
Right.
least optically it'll look like it's bowed. But you're still trying to, for the most part, match your gap.
Let's see. It's a good
And in the
angle.
instructions, it actually gives you a measurement to guide you in how thick that should be.
All right, so we're just taking off the two bolts that hold the roll cage. Here's a stock bolt versus the Jackson Racing one provided. The reason why they choose a longer one is because you can actually go see one that's already turboed. For the intercooler, it holds the bracket to hold the intercooler. So pretty sick. They're using a lot of like the OEM stuff, and it just works. So don't mind that the new one is actually a little dirty. It's because the kit that I'm actually putting on my Talon is one that they put on one of their test vehicles, and they just ran it just for data logging purposes, I believe for CARB and the emissions and the EPA, so they get all that, and then they took it back off. So it's still pretty much new, but I'm not complaining because everything obviously still works. And we just look side by side. This is a new one for the turbo kit. Here's a stock one,
Which is carb legal,
okay.
using OE parts, repurposed. There's a check valve inside this.
Oh, sick.
And
And this
basic-
comes with the kit.
Yeah, this whole setup comes with a kit. This cap and this check valve. What you do is we're gonna take this one off and cap it,
Okay.
and then that port is now gonna be the vacuum line for the blow-off valve, for the diverter valve. And then this
see.
piece we're gonna replace with this piece. and then it'll have the check valve in it.
Oh, okay.
So that way we keep things correct related to the emissions, the evap, and the carb approval. It keeps things in check related to everything related to the evap and the emissions and carb approval, while getting us the vacuum reference we need for the converter valve. This one has to be undone. This one has to be undone. Both of these come out. Another pro tip, these factory clips, very sharp. So try to be careful with them. They're sharper than I've ever come across any kind of clamp in that style. Okay. So now this is all squared and rooted to go here, and then this will be the vacuum line. I just got to get one more clamp that's slightly smaller, because this one's a little bit bigger. So once we put it on this cap, it's a little.
Got it.
It's a little.
That's just capped, and then.
Yeah, you see how like that cap, it's slightly too big, but the kit will provide you with one that fits that. Okay. So these are factory and fit kind of the factory vacuum lines.
And then that factory where you disconnect it is now the blow-off valve.
This one, yeah, this one that we're blocking off, this will be the vacuum line that we're going to put on for the blow-off valve. So it's really just the adapter for the runners. For the intake.
That sounds
runner adapter.
So we're going to take off the runner adapter. We just made that word up. That's the only thing that kind of makes sense on what it is.
Yeah, I like the sound of that.
So it's 4 screwdrivers.
5, yeah.
Oh, 5. Sorry.
There you go.
Let's see, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then what's cool about this is no longer used with the Jackson Racing Turbo kit. This part is what goes onto the throttle plate.
Yeah, and the bottom of the intake.
The bottom of the intake. And this,
let me zoom out.
this is now replaced with this piece. It's all in one piece now. So
You can see that says Honda and Jackson Racing. Honda, Jackson Racing. All right, and guys, again, this kit was used just briefly for a test vehicle, but don't forget that the gasket you need to put in there. So it's already in there.
Yeah,
We're
and
good.
when you get the kit, we provide you with the OEM gasket, the Honda OEM gasket that's shaped in here, in the OEM packaging with the instructions.
Oh, so there you go.
Yeah, like all you open it like any factory Honda part, you put it in, you follow the orientation. I don't know if you can see it, but okay, you see that seam where the gasket is mated with adhesive?
Yeah. Right
The
there.
instructions actually tell you to put it within 10 degrees of that range of the footprint of the manifold.
Interesting.
So that is where they agreed, is where it's supposed to be, and the instructions will tell you where to put it.
That's where, okay, so
Yeah.
that's where it needs to be, guys.
Yeah.
And then other than that, you get some Loctite.
Yeah, so what we're doing, the rudder plate was held by these kind of stepped Phillips head
Oh, I see. And those are
screws.
valve cover heads, yeah.
Yeah, so we're getting rid of those, and we're almost going stud conversion like you do on a head of a race engine.
Oh, okay.
So we go studs, and we throw them into there. We'll give them a dab of Loctite, but then once we start tightening down the manifold with the nylock, everything will come together. You know, the final torque will be
Yeah.
the whole thing coming together. I know some people in the world will spend the time to put the stud on, put two nuts
Yeah,
against each other to tighten it down. But we've tested both in the field, logged a lot of miles, and the method I'm showing you has never yielded failure or boost issue.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So, dab of blue Loctite. Blue, not
blue
red.
Loctite. Okay, that's good. Yeah, because I was looking at the bottle and it's red, but
Yeah,
that is
there-
a blue Loctite.
It is a red bottle, but it's blue.
Yeah.
You want blue so you can potentially mess with it and be able to take them off. All right. All I gotta do here is our OEM footprint. Slides right on the steps. We're gonna use flanged nylock 8mm hardware.
It still uses all 5, right?
Yep, still uses all 5. I start off by finger tightening them up to the nylock. so I can at least get it squarely in place, and they're kind of tricky to get to. So the least amount of time you have to actually squeeze the wrench in, the better. Your intake air temperature sensor that you took out of the factory air box.
Yep, which was originally
like hanging out right here. You take the O-ring we provide you, you put it in this spot in the intake manifold, and try not to let it fall out, but yeah, put it in there. Intake air temperature sensor, put her in there. And sometimes actually this is perfect that this happened.
Oh, because that's not what we want to happen?
No, just things related sometimes to the like the kind of plastic casting. Sometimes you get a little ridge on here, or sometimes the letters are a little just like taking up a little space. So you saw how like it, you know, I kind of gotta not force it in, but I gotta give it a little bit more effort. Just know that that's not a problem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that they come from, like, you can see the serial number, and
hold on, show it again.
You can see the serial number of the part.
I see.
That print is like just enough to not have it just drop.
Let it sit in.
Yeah. But so you give it a little bit of a twist.
The O-ring still in there?
Yeah, O-ring still in there. And the nice thing too is, since it's a bracket that goes around it in full 360, as you tighten it down, whatever little bit left of play,
it'll
clamp it all down.
So this harness comes with a kit, and it's an extension. It is an extension because the IET sensor was normally over there, and the original harness will not reach all the way to where the manifold is. So with that harness extension that Jacksons provide, it can now be ran, tucked into there, looks OEM, and
you know, just for safety, we'll give it another zippy.
Adding another zip tie.
Adding another zip tie.
Now, here's one thing that I don't think the instructions tell you is how many zip ties you should use, or where exactly you should place them. But you can use as much as you want. It's totally up to you.
Yeah, all our wiring is tucked away. So our vacuum line for the diverter valve or blow-off valve is right there.
Okay.
And then our new injectors are in. Just so you guys know, this center section is not completely solid to the outer section. See how these can actually move? Right. There's O-rings inside of them.
Oh, okay, so you can
get it. And then once you get it in and clamp it down, you see how that keeps the fuel rail together. But just so you know, if you move around these, or you know, they're kind of crooked from when you removed them, don't stress. Okay. They can pivot back into place. So you line up your O-rings as best you can. I've done it both ways, putting the O-rings on the injectors.
And do not pinch your O-rings.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what type of car you're working on, do not.
Yeah. Sometimes you also just got to try both. Like sometimes I try to keep them in there and see how it goes.
Oh, you already have them in there.
And if it doesn't seem like they're going okay, then put them on prior. Yeah, whichever one works for you.
I am very grateful that the Jacksons invited me over here. For one, so I could install the kit just in time for the Talon takeover, but for two, their technician is right here working on it, and I get to document everything. It honestly makes it that much easier for you guys, the viewers, to see, because if you've seen my other videos, and if you've ever done this before, working on a car and videotaping yourself is very hard.
Yeah, very
time consuming.
Very time consuming. All connectors back on, manifold on, fuel rail on, vacuum line good. So what I like to do with this vacuum line, even though it doesn't really have a bracket, I like to kind of sneak it in between these two lines. Right. Actually, I'm going to go on the other side of this one really quick, just so it can follow a similar path. So I kind of wedge it in between these two, and I put it through here.
Oh, okay.
And then what I do from there is I joke, I say I pre-stage it. I pre-stage it in an area where I can find it later, so I'm not hunting for it. That one, this bracket.
Oh, yeah. Oh, because that's where it'll be.
Yeah, that's where it'll live. And see now it kind of just flows with the rest of the evap and the fuel rail. I'm gonna put it here, and then your diverter valve will literally be right there.
I see. For this step, this is OEM, and to get this, the Jackson Racing Turbo kit comes with this little adapter right here, but this turns into this. You guys got that? This needs to be made into this. So it's just kind of like playing Tetris a little bit, you know. So obviously that's this piece right here. You might have to cut a little bit, and then you use the adapter that comes with the kit. And then from there, this piece, it's looking like they use this end, then you cut it right there. So there you go. There. So here it is. You guys ready? This is the part that everybody looks forward to when they get a new turbo kit. The turbo. The turbo is right here. It is a Garrett turbo. Obviously it's a Jackson Racing kit, and this thing is sick. It's not only sick, this thing is tiny. Look at this. This thing looks good. It's already assembled. We got the Jackson Racing flange right here.
You get it in position. We put.
We're putting a zip tie in there.
We're putting a zip tie in. So, when I put the kits together, I put a zip tie on what would be the backside large bolt. So I keep these two free. Reason I keep those two free, and now look, now we can work.
Yeah.
I do these hardware because also the support bracket goes into these hardware, not this hardware.
Oh, okay.
So now from there, now that that's in place, we can put the hardware through, and then it'll go through and be under here. So large, kind of let it hang out there. Nut is on the inside of this bracket. Bolt head on the outside. If you do this backwards, you're not gonna know you messed it up until you put it on, and then you realize that the nut does not clear this hardware.
I see.
And even if it does clear this hardware, you'll never get a wrench on it. But that side on there, you can get a wrench on it, and it does clear the hardware. So that's a super important step. Ask me how I know.
How do you know? I'm gonna guess
yeah.
you've accidentally.
Yeah. So you guys saw how I actually had the hardware all the way down, but it doesn't line up because of the angle of this. So all I do is I start to kind of push up the hardware until I get it in place, and then they just fall in. They fall in. And now, for the most part, that'll stay there because it can't move forward. The reason I'm not putting the bottom of the hardware on quite yet is because we're gonna put anti-seize on all the threads related to the exhaust and turbo related hardware because it sees a lot of heat. Most people would say anti-seize does not handle turbo heat.
So we do not use normal. Okay.
We use copper. We use copper anti-seize. Higher temperature point, higher temperature threshold.
And if you can't see, and you don't have a color TV, it's brown.
It's brown,
it's
or
copper.
Yeah, instead of silver. So like, you know, most common silver anti-seizes stable up to 1600 degrees, but copper is stable in excess of 1800.
Oh, with the locking nut.
And then
the washer.
Just hand tighten it until you get to the point of the resistance of the locking nut. It'll be pretty far up on this one because the bracket is taking up space. But right there, see how I'm running out of finger tight room?
All right, guys, so here's the oil feed line. And that's gonna be ran through. He's gonna be putting that on next. It's actually gonna be on this side over here. So
this is an open oil pressure related opening. What we're doing is replacing this 10 millimeter.
All right, so there's a stock one right there, and then we're replacing it with that banjo one, and that's going to be the feed.
Yeah, and this is going to feed to the turbo to keep the journal bearings lubricated. Your line will need to be arced this way.
Okay.
It's not going to come this way, and the clamps will not be perfectly where they are. You're going to have to get them where they need to be. But here, nice rule of thumb. See how all the idle clamps bring the line, how should I say, kind of toward the engine rather than out of the engine. So what I like to do is, remember this side, this is still finger tight because I want to be able to pivot that. I want to be able to
That's a straight end.
Yeah, and
The
I
other
just
side has a 90.
straight end goes in here. Keep things loose. Keep things loose. And then from here, I'm gonna put each bolt in and finger tighten it around. So now this one, see how idle clamp is somewhat inward?
Yep, got it.
Long guy.
And that's meaning how that clamp kind of pushes the hose that way towards the engine.
Okay, so you see how I wanted to get the turbo in place so I can do something along the lines of finger tightening this.
Right.
Even though I know how everything goes, I never want to assume that it's going to be exactly where it needs to be.
Right.
So I like starting a couple threads.
And then once everything is somewhat hand tightened in place, then you'll go back and start torquing everything down.
Correct. I'm gonna take that one back off really quick because it's easier to get this one on.
Oh, okay, so now you're just gonna put the oil feed, or sorry, the return line screwed on.
Same thing. Get this finger tightened as far as you can go, finger tight, so that you use the least amount of time playing with a wrench.
Usually the older Civics, this is all beat up, but as you can see, it's a 2021 Talon. It still uses that. That's really good. So if you guys are wondering, this part is OEM, but this is part of the Jackson Racing kit, and has the hangers, sick. So this is a downpipe. There's an O2 bung right there. So, okay guys, the kit does not come with this type of downpipe because the only difference is they have a bung for a wideband. And although it doesn't come with a wideband, it does not need a wideband. What I have planned that I cannot say yet, I'm gonna need that wideband. So they're doing me a huge favor by, again, giving me one of their test kits that they have that installed when they do all the testing. Just plugging it up for now, but eventually I'm gonna unplug that. Right.
So this is a little tricky, guys. You've got to get it past here, a little bit of a twist, through here, or so you should start rotating, through here, back out, and through. See, the sway bar is always a tough one with the fitment of this one. There, now we're relatively okay. Okay, if you guys saw it, you may not have seen it, but I already got the hangers into.
Yep, I saw.
Yeah, just easy peasy, no bevel, easy to get in there. Finagle the angle of the exhaust and in the hangers, and moving this around a little bit to get it to line up to go toward here.
Nice.
So now we're going to tighten down the turbo. We use 12-point heads. So use 12-point socket, and then you hold down here with like an open end.
So you guys know everything is hand tight, and then now it's finally just torquing everything down, and it's starting with the turbo pipe.
Here's my secret.
Oh, look at that. So that is a full-on extension. Went all the way to the electric ratchet.
And like I said, we finger tightened this prior. We know the threads are not crossed.
And
we anti-seized it prior.
Yep.
The Nord locks are in there. It's lined up. No other thing to do but give it the juice. The casting is lined up with the flange, and the gasket is clearly there, relatively in its central spot. And look, after we tightened everything down, look at the lineup of the exhaust flange to the turbo flange.
Oh, yep.
Didn't even plan that. That just goes with doing this right and just, again, staying patient. Box, when you receive it, it'll come in pieces. The inside adapter will come apart, and you have to put this hardware on.
So you kind of have to assemble it.
Yeah, this cap you'll assemble, and you'll put the filter. You can see that there's a K&N filter inside, but then we have Jackson Racing branded foam cover over it. Yeah,
Sick.
yeah. So this
for
whole
extra
thing,
protection.
yeah, this whole thing goes together. Here's our mounting bracket. It attaches to one of the OE mounting points with a smaller 10mm head bolt.
Yep.
And then over here, you use the 17mm head nut for the damper to hold it in place.
So here, let me get in right here.
Yeah.
That's a better angle. So there you go. You can see that right there. That's for the bracket. And then
this is why we have to notch the fender liner, is for just this piece right here.
Nice.
Yeah, so I like to get this one a little bit more secure so it doesn't come off so easily. You're trying to balance all of these lengths, right? So they all get to where they need to be.
So you guys remember that little custom extended line that we made? Well, right there it is. See, look at that. Another one came right there. It's like he knew what I was talking about already, and he's down there working on some other stuff. Look at that.
We get that relatively lined up and upward. This one we put on top of the turbo. This is the first charged pipe. And also take into account the orientation of what I do with the clamps. I put them in spaces where it makes sense to put a wrench.
Yeah. Yep.
And then another thing that helps, don't do your intercooler mounting bracket yet.
Okay, save that for after.
Yeah, mainly because it gives you a little bit extra room to wiggle, and you don't want to like, you know, hit a fin and over what, you know. So here we go.
And the harness is on the back.
Yep, it's where it needs to be. The hose clamps are already on the silicone couplers.
Tightened, right?
On the bottom. The bottom sides are tightened in an estimated area. They both got to just go vertical. And then from here, these boys sink in. And just bottom them out. And then look how I planned my coupler.
Here's the problem. And the only reason why it's a problem is because I have an aftermarket cage. So this right here, there's a little lip on it. So now the bracket itself, bracket's right here, it cannot sit flush. On OEM, on the OEM cage, it is flush. So that's all right. We'll still figure it out.
Remember what we said about the vacuum line?
Yep. Oh, it's right there. Look at that.
And what did we say about the
Connector for the fan? It's right there. Look at that.
Yeah, once we get everything square, I'll just zip tie it to there, zip tie it to there. Good.
All right, so now what we're doing is literally just putting everything back together. So firewall's going back on. So I need to put the battery part on, but turbo kit is in. This is a piece that you cut back there, so that's back on. And then I'm not gonna record everything getting back put together because I'm gonna hop in and start helping him so that we can get out of here. But then the seats will go back in, and he did me a huge favor by running the radio wires. There's our custom new electrical section. Rugged radio, rugged intercom. And I could install the rest of that later, but if you want to see the install of the radio, just go ahead and look for that in the playlist. That'll be a separate video because this is just all about the turbo kit right now.
All right, so it is the end of the day. It took a full day, but that's mostly because I had him redoing a lot of stuff, and I may or may have not had him run some extra wires for me, but that's a totally separate video. But the Jackson Racing Turbo Kit is finally in. They flashed it, it's ready to turn on and go for a spin. I'm really excited because I finally get to see what this thing feels like with a turbo kit on. I've been in one of theirs before, and if you saw one of the last videos, if you haven't seen it, go ahead and go watch it once this video is done. I actually drag race the NA version, which it used to be NA, against one of their Turbo'd Talons. It's 1000R, both on 32 tires, and I got smoked. So I think it's only fair that we rerun that and I get another hole shot, because you'll see in the video, I did hole shot him. And see this? I'm ready to rerun it, and I might put it, I say the loser has to buy tacos. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But first things first startup, and then I go for a little test drive. For starters, if I didn't know any better, nothing even changed. It still looks stock. But does it turn on like stock? It does. All right, so I have about half a tank. Let me turn this off really quick. I have half a tank in here. One thing, especially when you start making more power, is you don't ever want to run the gas tank empty. Because if you run the gas tank empty, especially if you're at wide open throttle, you're probably gonna mess something up. So I should be good with this, but that's just a tip of the day. So make sure you always have at least a full tank of gas. If you can't have full tank gas, at least half. And I believe that the Jackson Racing kit, it actually recommends that you don't go less than a quarter. But again, that's on any type of car, truck, whatever type of thing you're racing. So, all right, back in here. Thankfully, as I was backing out, they reminded me of a very, very important rule. If you guys know what that rule is, go ahead and comment it. If you don't know, I'm gonna tell you anyways. So I got super excited like anybody would, but I forgot that during the entire install process, the motor got cold. And probably shouldn't beat on the motor when it's cold. So I'm sitting here, letting it warm up. They actually recommend to where it gets like to 2 bars. So like anything, wait till it's warmed up and then get on it. So that's what I'm doing. Thankfully they stopped me, but as you can see, I just got really excited. I should have known better, but oh well. I'm like a kid in a candy store right now. This is my first, not only this is my first side-by-side, this is my first turboed side-by-side. So if it's anything like, it's nothing like a Civic, because guess what? Front wheel drive spins. This is all-wheel drive. So it's getting there and I'm pretty excited. And I know it's getting dark, but don't worry, I'm gonna make a bunch more content with sunlight and a bunch of pools and probably drag race this thing. But right now you'll at least get to hear it, and that just goes to show you need to subscribe. Subscribe, stay tuned, because there's gonna be a bunch more videos, and now that I'm turboed, I'm gonna have a lot more fun. This thing is nasty. I cannot wait to show you guys during the daylight, but I know you heard it. Huge shout out to Jackson Racing. And I'll put all the links in descriptions and below, but be sure to subscribe, because this weekend we're going to Utah and we're gonna have some fun. So thanks for watching, and remember, life's so sick. Live it.